When the mailman came to deliver his big package, I knew he had more than one. Then this happened. Hello, Reddit. I never thought I'd be one of those writing these posts. But here I am. I don't even know where to begin. I guess I should start by saying that this is a bit complicated, and it might be a bit long because I really need somewhere to rant. I'm not really the type to talk about my personal shit on Reddit, but I don't really have anyone to talk to this about. I'm also using a throwaway account because I definitely do not want my family or friends stumbling upon this. So, let me introduce myself. My name is Wendy, and I am a 33-year-old woman. I've been married to my husband, Paul, who is also 33, for about 3 years now. But our relationship goes back much further. Paul and I have been together since high school. Sweethearts, as they say. It feels like we've grown up together, shaped each other, learned life side by side. A lot of people think that childhood romances don't last, but ours did. Now, I know you probably hear this a lot when people start off these kinds of stories. Our marriage was perfect, or we never had any problems. But I mean it when I say our relationship was essentially perfect. And not just in that honeymoon phase sort of way, like really perfect for a long time. Even after we got married. We rarely fought. We communicated well. We supported each other through everything. Paul was everything you could ask for in a partner. He was attentive, affectionate, romantic. He never forgot an anniversary or a special moment. He'd bring me flowers for no reason, cook dinner if I had a bad day at work, always listen when I needed to vent. It wasn't just the grand gestures, though, it was the little things. The way he would check in with me during the day with a simple text, thinking of you, or the way he always made sure I felt safe and loved. He was my rock. We didn't have any kids yet, but we were planning to start trying soon. We had talked about it a lot and figured the timing was just about right. I could already imagine our future family, Paul being the wonderful dad that I always knew he would be, me staying home for a bit to raise our kids before going back to work, everything falling into place. Paul was the provider, and I was something of a stay-at-home wife. Not fully a stay-at-home wife, as I did have a job, but it was one of those jobs where the hours are so flexible and the pay so small that it felt more like a part-time gig. It didn't consume me the way Paul's work did for him. He worked long hours, carried the bulk of our financial responsibilities, and I appreciated that. I really did. For the longest time, things between us were steady, so good, so effortless, that it's hard to pinpoint when things started to change. Maybe it was subtle at first, little things I didn't notice right away, or things I did notice but brushed off, because I didn't want to acknowledge that something could be wrong, because for so long, nothing was wrong, or at least that's what I kept telling myself. I mean, Paul was everything I could have ever asked for in a partner. He did all the right things, planned spontaneous date nights, arranged movie nights at home with my favorite snacks, and suggested weekend getaways when he knew we both needed a break. He was thoughtful like that, always there for me, no matter what. If I called him in the middle of his workday, needing to talk or needing him to come home for something, he would drop everything without hesitation. He always prioritized me, even when I didn't ask him to. You'd think that kind of commitment would keep a relationship rock solid, right? That it would be enough to make anyone feel loved and fulfilled. But somewhere along the way, it stopped being enough. And not because of Paul. He didn't change. He was still the sweet, reliable, devoted man I'd known since high school. But I started to feel restless. It's hard to explain that feeling because it doesn't make any sense, not even to me. But it was like everything was so stable, so predictable, that it became suffocating in a way. Like I knew exactly how every day, every week, every month would play out. And it was the same routine, over and over again. It sounds awful to say, but I was bored. Bored in my own marriage. It wasn't Paul's fault. He was still doing all the things he'd always done, making an effort, being attentive and loving. But I think that was the problem. I knew Paul so well that nothing ever felt new anymore. There were no surprises, no unpredictability. I had gotten so used to his consistency, his predictability, that it all became monotonous. And I hated that I was even feeling this way, but I couldn't shake it. I started asking myself if this was it, if this was what the rest of my life would look like. This steady, stable routine where nothing ever really changes. It felt like I was missing out on something, even though I couldn't exactly pinpoint what that something was. And as ridiculous as it sounds, I started to wonder if I had settled down too soon. If being with Paul since high school had kept me from exploring life, from experiencing the excitement of something new. That thought festered inside me, growing bigger the more I tried to push it down, and I regretted it in a way. I regretted not taking the time to explore more, to see what else was out there before committing my life to Paul. It's a terrible thing to admit, but I felt like I had skipped a whole chapter of my life that I could never get back. And I hated that feeling. I think that's where the restlessness came from. I craved something new, something exciting, something that would break the monotony of my life, and I didn't even know what that was. I wasn't unhappy with Paul. I wasn't looking to leave him or anything like that, but there was this nagging voice in the back of my mind telling me that there was more out there, something I hadn't experienced, something I might never get the chance to experience if I stayed on the path I was on. It's embarrassing to admit now, but I started looking for that excitement in all the wrong places. It was like this itch, this nagging feeling I couldn't quite figure out or scratch. No matter how hard I tried to push it down, it just wouldn't go away. And the worst part, I didn't even know how to deal with it. I would go out more, socialize more, anything to try and shake up my life, to break away from the monotonous routine I had fallen into. I convinced myself that what I needed was a change in scenery, some harmless fun to remind myself that there was still life outside of the comfort zone Paul and I had built together. I started noticing things I shouldn't have been noticing, little details about other people that I had no business paying attention to. Flirting became a way to spice things up, even if it was just harmless banter. It made me feel alive in a way that I hadn't felt in a long time. I think that's where it all started, really. And then there was the mailman. Yes, the mailman. It's so ridiculous to even type that out, but for some reason, this guy, this tall, ridiculously attractive man who had been delivering our mail for years, started becoming more than just the guy who dropped off packages. I don't know when it started, but I began noticing him, like really noticing him. It wasn't anything big at first, just a quick glance when he came by, maybe a smile when our eyes met. Harmless, right? I mean, who doesn't appreciate a friendly smile? But then those glances started lingering. I started paying attention to him in ways that I knew I shouldn't, noticing things I would have never given a second thought to before. His broad shoulders, the way his uniform fit him, the confident yet casual way he moved. I'm embarrassed even writing this, but I started looking forward to his deliveries like some sort of schoolgirl with a crush. It felt harmless at first, like a silly distraction. I mean, it's not like anything was going to happen. He was just the guy who brought the mail, nothing more. But then I noticed the way he started looking at me. Not just the usual smile and go routine, but really looking. His eyes would linger just a little too long, his smile would stretch a little wider, and his voice would drop lower when he greeted me. And I'd be lying if I said that didn't spark something inside me. I didn't want it to, but it did. It was like a tiny jolt of excitement, something that made me feel attractive, seen, in a way that I hadn't felt in so long. And it was stupid, I knew that. I tried to brush it off, telling myself that I was reading too much into it, that it was all in my head. I wish I could say I snapped out of it, that I realized how stupid and reckless it all was. But the truth is I didn't. Those feelings, it only grew stronger. I started to look forward to him dropping off the packages more than I ever should have. It became the highlight of my day, the thing I secretly waited for while going about my regular routine. It was such a strange shift in my life, one that I didn't see coming, but suddenly this guy, this mailman, was all I could think about. At first, I kept things subtle, just small talk, the occasional smile or compliment. But as time went on, I got bolder and bolder with my flirting. There was something about the way he looked at me that made me feel alive. I felt like I had control in those moments, like I was desirable again, like I was someone worth noticing. And I think that's what scared me the most. I started to make excuses to be outside when I knew he'd be coming by. I'd linger near the front of the house, pretending to water the plants or sweep the porch, all the while waiting for the familiar sound of the mail truck pulling up. It became this ritual, this strange little game I was playing with myself. But with each passing day, I pushed the boundaries just a little bit more. It wasn't long before I began to dress differently when I knew he was coming. Not anything too scandalous, at least not at first, but enough to get his attention. Instead of my usual jeans and t-shirt, I'd throw on something more revealing. A low-cut top, a shorter skirt, maybe something that showed off a little more skin than I would normally dare to. I wanted him to notice, to see me as more than just the woman who lived at this address. And he did notice. Every time he came by, I'd step out on the porch with a bright, overly excited greeting. My voice was just a little too cheerful, my smile a little too wide. It was like I was a different person, someone bold, someone confident, someone who wasn't trapped in the same predictable routine day in and day out. The first time I could tell he was caught off guard at first, but then he started to play along. His eyes would linger a little longer, his smiles would be a little more suggestive, and we started to flirt a bit. I don't know what came over me, but I started to enjoy the game, the way I could make him react with just a glance or a flirtatious comment. It made me feel powerful in a way I hadn't felt in years. And my outfits, they kept getting bolder. I started wearing clothes I never would have worn otherwise. Low-cut tops that showed off just enough cleavage to catch his eye, tight skirts that hugged my curves, even dresses that barely skimmed my thighs. It was exciting, knowing that I was crossing a line, but I didn't care. I was too wrapped up in the excitement, too caught up in the attention he was giving me. I'd stand there, smiling and chatting as if it was the most normal thing in the world, all the while knowing exactly what I was doing. I'd laugh at his jokes, touch his arm when we talked, and give him that look, you know the one. The look that says you're thinking about more than just the weather. And every time he looked back at me with those eyes, it sent a jolt of excitement through me. It wasn't innocent anymore, and I knew it. The way he looked at me wasn't just friendly, it was hungry. And the way I responded? Well, let's just say I wasn't exactly discouraging him. I was feeding off it. I wanted him to look at me that way, to see me in a way that I hadn't been seen in years. I started planning my days around when I knew he'd be coming. I'd make sure to be outside when his truck pulled up, dressed in something that would turn his head. I'd walk out to the porch like it was just another day, but in reality, my heart would be pounding in my chest. My hands would be shaking with anticipation. I wasn't just flirting anymore. I was actively seducing him, and he knew it. One day, I even wore this tight little sundress that I'd had buried in the back of my closet for years. It was one of those dresses that made you feel like $1,000,000, but also made you second-guess whether it was appropriate to wear outside. I didn't care. I wanted his eyes on me. I wanted him to see me as something more than just another woman on his route. And when he did see me in that dress, his reaction was immediate. His eyes widened for just a second before he caught himself, but I saw it. That flash of desire, that spark that said I had crossed a line. And I liked it. God, I liked it so much more than I should have. From that point on, things started to escalate. Our conversations grew more suggestive, our eye contact more intense. He'd linger just a little longer when he handed me the mail, his fingers brushing against mine. I knew where it was heading. I should have stopped. I should have put an end to it right then and there, but I didn't. I craved the attention, I craved the excitement, I craved him. I'll never forget that morning. It started off like any other, but something about that day felt different. I was home alone, waiting for a package that I knew was supposed to arrive. The sound of the mail truck pulling up outside sent a jolt through me, something that would have normally been insignificant, routine, but now felt like something I was waiting for all morning. And then the realization hit me. What the hell was I doing? Why was I feeling this way? Why was I practically hovering by the door like a giddy schoolgirl, waiting for the mailman to show up? I wish I could say I had an answer for myself in that moment, but I didn't. There wasn't any logical explanation for the excitement, for the butterflies in my stomach, for the way my heart raced as I heard him pull up. I regret it now, looking back on it. I regret everything. But in that moment, I was too caught up in the thrill, the adrenaline, the attention. Nope. Before I even had the chance to second-guess myself, I was already opening the door and stepping out onto the porch to greet him. And there he was, standing there with that same easy smile he always had. The package was in his hands, and it should have been a simple, mundane moment. a routine delivery. He hands me the package, I thank him, and he moves on to his next stop. But that day, it wasn't ordinary. It didn't feel simple. We started with the usual small talk, but as we chatted, my eyes kept on drifting downwards. I kept on focusing on something I shouldn't have been focusing on. I kept on looking at his pants longer than I should have. And God, he looked huge. Instead of pulling myself back, I let my curiosity get the better of me. I don't even know what possessed me to say what I said next, but before I knew it, I was flirting with him in a way I never had before. I made some stupid, suggestive comment about his package, asking if that was all he had for me, implying there was more he could deliver, if you catch the innuendo. The words slipped out so easily, almost like they had a life of their own, and as soon as they left my lips, I couldn't take them back. It was a comment I never would have made under normal circumstances, but nothing about that moment was normal. I don't know what I was thinking. Maybe I wasn't thinking at all. Maybe I was just riding on the rush of excitement, the thrill of doing something I shouldn't be doing. And then, instead of shutting it down, instead of brushing off my ridiculous comment, he played along. He encouraged me. He told me he had more than just that package, that he could show me what else he had if I let him in. And I did. God, I can't believe I did, but I did. I let him in. I crossed that line and I knew exactly what I was doing. I could feel it in my bones, that this was a moment I couldn't come back from, a moment that would change everything. But I still let it happen. I could feel the weight of my actions pressing down on me, even as I acted on them. I'm not going to go into the details because that's not the point of this post. I don't need to lay out exactly what happened, but I think you can fill in the blanks. The point is, I cheated on my husband with the mailman, and as soon as it was over, almost immediately, I felt this overwhelming wave of regret. It hit me like a freight train. The guilt, the shame, the realization of what I had just done. I wished I could undo it, rewind time, and make a different choice. But I couldn't. And even though I regretted it so deeply in that moment, I didn't stop. That's the part that's hard to admit. I didn't stop. After that day, it became this secret thing between us. Every time he delivered the mail, we would sleep together, and each time would bring a fresh wave of guilt and shame for me. I knew what I was doing was wrong. I knew I was betraying my husband in the worst way possible. But I couldn't seem to stop myself. I felt so guilty. Every day that guilt gnawed at me. It was like an unrelenting weight that sat on my chest and refused to let go. It was eating me alive. Every time I looked at Paul, every time I saw that sweet smile he always gave me, or heard him tell me that he loved me, it crushed me a little more. I didn't even have the strength to smile back most days. I felt sick with myself, with what I had done. I didn't know what to do. I was trapped in a mess of my own making, and it felt impossible to fix. Part of me wanted to come clean, to lay it all out and confess the truth to Paul, but I was terrified. I knew that if I told him, it would destroy him. It would destroy everything we had built together, the life we had created, the love he had always shown me so selflessly. And that terrified me more than anything. The worst part of all was that I couldn't even explain why I had done it, why I had let myself get caught up in something so reckless, so destructive. It wasn't like Paul had changed or done anything wrong. It was all me. It was like I had gotten restless and confused, craving something different, something thrilling without any real reason. I couldn't even justify my actions to myself, let alone to Paul. I was stuck with this secret, and the weight of it was crushing me. I had no idea how to move forward, how to make things right. How do you fix something when you're the one who shattered it in the first place? How do you even begin to pick up the pieces after you've been the one to break them? What hurt the most was that Paul didn't even find out from me. I didn't have the courage to tell him. No, he found out through someone else, a neighbor, of all people. Apparently, they had been watching me for some time, seeing me with the mailman when I thought no one was looking. I never imagined anyone was around during those deliveries. Our neighborhood was always so quiet during the day, with everyone off at work. I thought we were in the clear, hidden away from prying eyes. But I was wrong. Someone had noticed. Someone had been watching, and they went straight to Paul and relayed their suspicions. That's how he found out. Not from me, not from an honest conversation where I took accountability for what I had done. No, he heard it from a neighbor. When Paul confronted me, it was the messiest argument we'd ever had. He didn't yell, not at first, but he looked so pained. I knew I had hurt him deeply. I broke down completely. I crumbled under the weight of the guilt that had been consuming me for so long. The moment he asked me about it, I couldn't hold it in anymore. I admitted everything. I told him about the affair with the mailman, how long it had been going on, and how sorry I was. I apologized over and over again, trying to explain how I had been feeling, restless, bored, unfulfilled, but the words felt hollow. None of it justified what I had done. I told him I was willing to do anything to fix things. I offered to go to couples counseling, to therapy, to work on myself. I begged him to understand, to give me a chance to make things right. But Paul wasn't hearing any of it. He didn't want to listen. The argument escalated quickly after that. He became angrier, more hurt, and before I knew it, he was kicking me out. He couldn't bear to look at me, couldn't stand to be in the same house with me anymore. I packed a bag and left to my parents' house. That was a few days ago, and since then, Paul hasn't spoken to me. He won't answer my calls. He won't reply to my texts. I've tried every platform, WhatsApp, iMessage, Instagram, everything. He's completely shut me out. I can't even tell if he's reading my messages or if he's just ignoring them altogether. I don't know what to do. I'm exhausted, emotionally drained, and filled with regret. I don't know how to fix this. I don't even know if it's fixable. How do you begin to mend something that you've broken so completely? How do you ask for forgiveness when you don't even deserve it? I'm at a loss. The pain of losing Paul, the man I've loved for so long, feels unbearable. But I know I brought it all upon myself. I don't know if there's any chance at all to put the pieces back together, or if I've shattered things beyond repair. Update. Hello, Reddit. Took me a while to post this update because honestly, I was really embarrassed by the responses I got the first time. I understand that I made a mistake, a huge one, but the amount of judgment and shaming I got was overwhelming. I get it, okay? I get that people were upset with what I did, but at the end of the day, I'm a human being. I make mistakes, just like anyone else. I admitted my mistakes. I owned up to them. I didn't hide or try to cover anything up. Sure, Paul didn't find out from me, but I didn't lie or deny anything when he confronted me, did I? I didn't try to make excuses. I didn't run away from what I had done, so I just want to make that clear because it seems like some of you are really fixated on the fact that I didn't tell him first. Either way, I'm only updating now because I do have an update, and apparently a lot of people really wanted to know what happened next. It seems like some of you are a little too invested in my misery, but here it is. Paul finally talked to me. After weeks of silence, he finally agreed to have a conversation, but only after my parents got involved. They had to practically beg him to meet with me, to at least hear me out. So we talked, and honestly, it was one of the hardest conversations I've ever had in my life. To summarize, Paul is no longer interested in our marriage. He told me straight up that he wants a divorce. He said that as far as he's concerned, our relationship ended the moment he found out about the affair. He kept saying that he had been hoping it was just a bad dream, that maybe he would wake up one day and find that it wasn't real. But he couldn't shake the reality of what I did, and it's been eating away at him ever since. He told me that he hasn't been okay for the past few weeks, that he's been struggling to come to terms with it all. He said that if I had just talked to him, if I had come to him and told him how I was feeling, we might have had a chance to work through things together. But the fact that I chose to cheat instead was something he couldn't get past. He reminded me that I've always known that cheating was a deal breaker for him, that it was something he would never tolerate. And he said that no matter how much I cried or begged, he couldn't forgive me. He told me that cheating shattered our marriage beyond repair, that it had changed everything between us. He said he had always done his best for me, always tried to be the kind of husband I could rely on, but now he was just done. He couldn't go back to the way things were, no matter how much I wanted to, and he didn't want to waste any more time pretending that we could fix things. So that's it, I guess. Paul wants a divorce. He's made up his mind, and there doesn't seem to be anything I can do to change it. I tried reasoning with him. I tried to explain how I've been feeling, but it didn't matter. He's done. And as much as it hurts, I have to accept that. I still think maybe he's confused, that maybe with a little more time, we could figure out a way to work through this. I don't know. I'm not ready to give up on our marriage yet, but it's clear that he's already checked out. I guess I'm just holding on to hope, even though I know deep down that it's probably over. So, yeah, thanks for nothing, Reddit. Update. Hey, Reddit. It's been a while, and honestly, I needed the break. The negativity and hate on here were overwhelming, and I just couldn't handle it at the time. Plus, life has been extremely busy, and I've had a lot on my plate. I've been trying to piece things back together, but I guess I underestimated how hard it would be. I've been doing my best to fix things with Paul, but no matter how hard I try, it seems like he really is done. A couple of days ago, I got served the divorce papers, and that moment made everything feel real. It was a wake-up call I wasn't ready for. Up until then, I had been deflecting, trying to pretend like this whole divorce thing wasn't actually happening. I refused to get a lawyer, refused to make any real moves to deal with the reality of it. I kept hoping that maybe Paul would change his mind, that maybe he'd come to his senses, and we could at least try to work things out. But being served with those papers made me realize that he's not coming back. He's done, and there's nothing I can do to change that. It's been hard to accept that. Really hard. I keep replaying everything in my mind, wondering where things went wrong, and regretting every step I took that led us to this point. I've been job searching now, because I'm going to need to support myself. My parents have been letting me stay with them, but they've made it clear that I'm going to have to start paying rent soon. I can't just live off of them indefinitely, and honestly, I don't want to. The job I have now isn't enough. The pay is terrible, and the hours are barely enough to get by. So, I'm trying to find something better, and if I can, maybe I'll juggle the 2 jobs just to make ends meet. The thing that hurts the most isn't just losing Paul, it's how everyone else has reacted. All of our mutual friends have completely taken Paul's side. Not one of them has reached out to check on me or to even hear my side of the story. Some have even blocked me altogether. It's like I've been completely cut off from the people who used to be such a big part of my life. It's painful to realize that these people I thought were my friends didn't even give me a chance to explain or to try and make amends. Even my parents have been weird about the whole thing. They're letting me stay with them, sure, but they've made it clear that they're disappointed in me. It's like they're taking Paul's side too, which feels like such a betrayal. My in-laws, who I used to be so close to, haven't reached out at all. I thought they loved me like their own daughter. But since this whole thing blew up, they've been completely silent. It's like I don't even exist to them anymore. I know I messed up, and I'm not trying to make excuses for my actions, but it feels like nobody is even willing to hear me out or understand what I've been going through. It's a lonely, isolating feeling, and I'm just trying to figure out how to move forward from here. I know I can't fix what's already broken, but I still wish I could at least make people understand that I'm more than just the mistakes I've made. Update. Hey Reddit, it's been a while since I updated, and I apologize for going quiet. Life's been hectic. My mom would say life has been lifing, and honestly, that's exactly how it feels. But I'm back now with an update, so let me just get into it. First of all, I did manage to get another job. It's not much and it doesn't pay great, but the good thing is that the hours aren't overwhelming, so I'm currently juggling 2 jobs. That's not what I wanted for my life, though. Definitely not. I never saw myself being in a situation where I have to balance 2 low-paying jobs just to get by. But this is where I am now. My whole life has gone sideways, and I'm just trying to make sense of it all. Right now, I'm looking for something better, something that pays more and has better hours, so I can quit these 2 jobs and just focus on one. Hopefully, I'll find something soon. I keep applying and hoping for the best, but it's tough out there. Second of all, the divorce has been finalized. It's crazy how something that once meant so much can come to an end so quickly. Our marriage, our entire life together, was done in less than an hour at the courthouse. That's it. Years of being together, sharing memories, planning a future, and it all wrapped up in less than 60 minutes. It blows my mind. How does something so significant in my life get reduced to paperwork and signatures? I don't know how to move on. Paul was my life. I don't know anyone or anything else outside of him. How am I supposed to survive this? I'm just lost. Thankfully, we didn't have any debts. Both of us went through college debt-free, and any little debt we did have was paid off years ago. Paul got to keep the house because it was his. His name was the only one on the deed, and it was actually a gift from his parents, so I never even had a claim to it. Our finances were always kept separate, and since we didn't have any kids, child support or custody issues weren't even a factor. And just like that, it was over. Done and done. My entire life unraveled in a blink. What's even harder to accept is that it feels like I'm the only one grieving this marriage. It feels like I'm the only one who's broken by it. Paul seemed to move on so quickly, and I'm just stuck here, still hurt, still feeling the weight of everything. Every day I have to wake up, put on a brave face, and go to work as if everything's fine. I smile, I pretend, but inside I feel like I'm falling apart. It's exhausting. There are days where I want to crawl into a hole and never come out. Some days I just want the earth to open up and swallow me whole because the pain feels too heavy to carry. It's like I'm drowning in it. My parents have been kind enough to let me stay with them, but I'm paying rent, and that's okay for now. I do want to move out at some point, but it feels like a distant dream with the way things are going. Honestly, I'm just existing right now. I'm not living, I'm just surviving. Every day is just about getting through it, about not falling apart in the middle of work or breaking down at the end of the day. I don't know how long it's going to take to feel normal again, or if I ever will. I'm just trying to make it from one day to the next. That's pretty much it. I don't have any big revelations or solutions. I'm just here trying to survive.